clock on my dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when I pulled into the parking lot of Elite Fitness. Lauren's silver Lexus sat under the flickering streetlight like a guilty secret waiting to be discovered. I'd been working late shifts at the logistics company for 3 months straight, trying to save enough for our honeymoon in Italy. Meanwhile, my fiancée had apparently found a new hobby that kept her at the gym until midnight. I killed the engine of my beat-up Ford pickup and sat there for a moment, listening to the metal tick as it cooled. The contrast between our vehicles told the whole story of our relationship, her daddy's money versus my blue-collar paycheck. But love was supposed to conquer all that, right? That's what I kept telling myself every time her parents looked at me like I was something they'd scrape off their designer shoes. The gym's main entrance was locked, but I knew about the side door that the trainers used. I'd picked Lauren up here enough times to know the layout. As I walked around the building, my work boots crunched on broken glass from beer bottles. This wasn't exactly the safest neighborhood, but Elite Fitness offered the kind of exclusive personal training that Lauren's crowd demanded. Through the window of the trainer's office, I could see her silhouette. She was laughing, head thrown back in that carefree way that used to make my heart skip. But she wasn't alone. A man's shadow moved closer to hers, and then I heard her voice carrying through the thin walls. "What Mike doesn't know won't hurt him," she said, her tone light and casual. "Besides, Brad's a much better workout than any treadmill." The laughter that followed hit me like a punch to the gut. I recognized the male voice, Brad Morrison, the Golden Boy trainer who looked like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. The same guy who always gave me that condescending smirk whenever I came to pick up Lauren. I pressed closer to the window, my breath fogging the glass. Lauren was sitting on the edge of a desk, her workout clothes disheveled. Brad stood between her legs, his hands on her thighs. They were kissing with the kind of passion that Lauren and I hadn't shared in months. "This is such good stress relief," she murmured against his lips. "Mike's been so boring lately, always worried about money and the wedding expenses. You make me feel alive again." Brad chuckled, running his hands through her blonde hair. "Well, I aim to please. Besides, your friend Jessica was right. What's the point of being engaged if you can't have a little fun on the side?" Jessica, Lauren's best friend and maid of honor. The same woman who'd been encouraging Lauren to live a little and explore her options before settling down. Apparently, her advice had been more specific than I'd realized. I stumbled backward from the window, my mind reeling. 3 years together. A year-long engagement. I'd worked overtime for months to afford the ring that sparkled on her finger, the same finger that was now tangled in another man's hair. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "Working late with Jess on wedding planning. Don't wait up. Love you." The lie was so casual, so effortless, that it made me wonder how many others there had been. I looked back at the window where my fiancé was now pulling off Brad's shirt, and something cold and calculating settled in my chest. I walked back to my truck, my mind already working. If Lauren wanted to play games, I'd show her what real stress relief looked like, but I wouldn't be the fool who confronted her in a jealous rage. No, I'd be smarter than that. The drive home took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Our apartment, the one I'd been paying for while she focused on her fitness career, felt different when I walked in. The photos on the walls, the engagement announcement on the refrigerator, her wedding dress hanging in the closet, it all looked like props in someone else's life. I sat at my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I checked Lauren's phone records. We were on a family plan, and I had access to the account. What I found made my stomach turn. Hundreds of texts to Brad's number, starting 3 months ago. Late-night calls that lasted hours. And not just Brad. There were frequent messages to Jessica, and even some numbers I didn't recognize. When Lauren came home at 1:30 a.m., her hair still damp from what she claimed was the longest shower ever, I was waiting in the living room with a beer and a smile. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Hey, baby," she said, kissing my cheek. She smelled like men's cologne. "Sorry I'm so late. You know how Jess gets when she's planning something. We were at her place going over seating charts until midnight." "Seating charts?" I repeated, taking a long sip of my beer. "That sounds stressful." "Oh, it was," she laughed, heading toward the bedroom. "I definitely need to hit the gym tomorrow for some stress relief." I watched her walk away, admiring her acting skills. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the day Lauren learned what real stress felt like. I woke up before dawn and drove to Elite Fitness, parking across the street with a clear view of the entrance. At 6:15 a.m., Brad's black BMW pulled into the lot. At 6:30, Lauren's Lexus arrived. They didn't even try to hide it. She walked straight to his car, leaned through the driver's window, and kissed him like they were starring in their own personal romance movie. My phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. "Morning, honey," she chirped. "I'm about to head into my workout. Probably won't be home until late. Brad's putting me through an intensive training session today." "I bet he is," I said, watching her laugh at something Brad was saying. "Sounds like you're really committed to this fitness thing." "Oh, I am. I've never felt better. Brad says I'm his most dedicated client." "I'm sure you are. Hey, Lauren." "Yeah? We need to talk when you get home, about the wedding." There was a pause. Through my windshield, I could see her face change, the smile faltering. "What about the wedding?" "Just some details we need to sort out. Nothing major." "Okay," she said, but her voice had lost its cheerful edge. "I'll see you tonight." I spent the day making phone calls and gathering information. First, I called Tommy Rodriguez, a private investigator I'd met through my job. He owed me a favor from when I'd helped expedite a shipping container through customs. "Mike, buddy," Tommy said when I explained the situation. "I hate to say it, but this sounds pretty cut and dried. How much evidence do you need?" "Enough to make sure I don't lose everything in a divorce. Give me 3 days, I'll get you photos, financial records, the works. But Mike, you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better not to know." "I already know," I said. "Now I need proof." Next, I called my sister Jenny, the only family I had left since our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Jenny was a paralegal at a law firm downtown, and she'd never liked Lauren. "I knew something was off about that girl," Jenny said after I told her everything. "The way she looked at you, like you were some kind of charity case. And her friends, God, they're awful. I need a good divorce lawyer, Jen, someone who won't get intimidated by her father's money. I know just the guy, Richard Stone. He's a shark, but he's fair. And Mike, I'm proud of you for not doing something stupid." "Who says I'm not going to do something stupid?" "Because I know you. You're going to be smart about this. You're going to make her pay, but you're going to do it the right way." That evening, Lauren came home at 9 p.m., looking flushed and satisfied. She'd changed clothes since I saw her at the gym, but she'd missed a hickey on her neck. It was small, barely visible, but I'd been looking for it. "How was your workout?" I asked from the couch. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Brad really pushed me today. I'm going to shower." "Actually, let's talk first." She froze halfway to the bathroom. "Can't it wait? I'm really tired." "No, it can't wait." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, as far from me as possible. Up close, I could see that her lips were swollen, her hair messed up in a way that had nothing to do with exercise. "What's going on, Mike? You're acting weird." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. The first picture was one I'd taken through the gym window the night before, Lauren and Brad in a passionate embrace. Her face went white. "You want to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady. She stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked up at me with defiance instead of shame. "It's not what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like my fiancée is screwing her personal trainer." "It's just stress relief, Mike. It doesn't mean anything." The casual way she said it hit me harder than if she'd broken down crying. "Stress relief?" "Yes. God, you're so dramatic. It's not like I'm in love with him. It's just physical. All couples go through this." "All couples cheat on each other?" "All couples find ways to deal with the pressure of getting married. You've been so focused on money and work that you haven't paid attention to me in months. Brad makes me feel attractive again." I scrolled to the next photo. Text messages between her and Jessica discussing their boys' night out and how Mike will never find out. "And this? Is this stress relief too?" Lauren's jaw tightened. "You went through my phone?" "I went through our phone records. You know, the account I pay for." "You have no right—" "I have no right?" I stood up, the anger finally breaking through my calm facade. "I'm working 60-hour weeks to pay for a wedding to a woman who's been lying to my face for months. It's not lying if it doesn't matter. It matters to me." She stood up too, her face flushed with anger. "Well, maybe that's your problem, Mike. Maybe you care too much about things that don't matter. Maybe that's why I need to find excitement somewhere else." "So this is my fault?" "I'm not saying it's your fault, but you're not exactly the most exciting guy in the world. Brad makes me laugh. He makes me feel sexy. When was the last time you did that?" I stared at her, this woman I'd thought I knew, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger. "How long?" "What? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then shrugged. 3 months, maybe 4. 4 months. Right around the time I'd started working overtime to pay for the honeymoon she'd insisted on. "Anyone else?" "Mike, anyone else, Lauren?" "There was a guy from the country club, and one of Jessica's friends, but it's not... Not what? Not cheating? Not important? I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Pack your things. You can't kick me out. This is my apartment, too. Actually, it's not. The lease is in my name. You've never paid a dime of rent. My father will... Your father will what? Buy you another apartment? Good. You can screw your personal trainer there. Lauren's face crumpled, but not with sadness, with rage. You're being ridiculous. This is why I can't stand being with you sometimes. You're so jealous and insecure. I'm insecure? I'm not the one who needs validation from multiple men. At least they know how to treat a woman. By screwing someone else's fiancée? Yeah, real classy. She grabbed the suitcase from my hands. Fine, I'll pack. But don't think this is over, Mike. The wedding is in 6 weeks. My parents have already paid for everything. You can't just cancel. Watch me. As she threw clothes into the suitcase, her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and smiled, actually smiled, while packing to leave the man she was supposed to marry. Brad? I asked. He's worried about me. At least someone cares. Tell Brad I said thanks. Thanks for what? For showing me who you really are before I made the biggest mistake of my life. Lauren zipped up the suitcase and headed for the door. At the threshold, she turned back. You know what, Mike? You're going to regret this. My family has connections in this town. My father could make things very difficult for you. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You're nobody here. I'm somebody. Don't forget that. She slammed the door behind her, and I was alone in the apartment that suddenly felt 10 times bigger and 1,000 times quieter. I poured myself a whiskey and sat back down on the couch, staring at the engagement photos on the coffee table. In them, Lauren was smiling at the camera while I looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing in the world. Tomorrow, I thought, the real fun would begin. 3 days later, Tommy Rodriguez called with a manila envelope full of evidence that made my stomach turn. Photos of Lauren with Brad at a motel outside town. Financial records showing she'd been using a credit card I didn't know about to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners. Phone records that revealed the true scope of her activities. There's more, Tommy said, sitting across from my kitchen table. Your girl's been busy. That friend of hers, Jessica, she's been running interference, but she's also been participating. He slid another set of photos across the table. Jessica and Lauren with 2 men I didn't recognize, all of them looking very cozy at an upscale restaurant downtown. Apparently they've been telling people you have an arrangement, an open relationship. Jessica's been spreading the word that you're okay with it. What? Gets worse. They've been laughing about it, calling you names. Jessica told people at the country club that you're so desperate to marry up that you'll tolerate anything. I stared at the photos, my hands shaking slightly. It was one thing to be cheated on. It was another to be publicly humiliated by people I'd considered friends. There's something else, Tommy said quietly. Your buddy Marcus Webb? He knows. Marcus had been my best friend since college. He was supposed to be my best man. What do you mean he knows? He's been covering for her. Jessica asked him to provide alibis if you ever got suspicious. He's been telling people he's been hanging out with you on nights when you were actually working. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Marcus had been in my wedding party. I'd trusted him with everything. How long has he known? At least 2 months, maybe longer. I sat back in my chair, trying to process it all. My fiancée, her best friend, and my best friend had all been working together to make me look like a fool. What do you want to do about it? Tommy asked. I want them all to pay. That afternoon, I drove to Marcus's apartment downtown. He lived in a trendy loft that his parents had bought for him. Another trust fund kid who'd never worked a real day in his life. I'd always overlooked his privileged background because I thought he was loyal. I knocked on his door, and he answered with a beer in his hand and a guilty expression on his face. Mike, hey man, what's up? We need to talk. He stepped aside to let me in, but his body language was tense. The apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a guy who spent his days managing his family's investment portfolio. Expensive furniture, abstract art, and a view of the city that probably cost more than I made in a year. So, he said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than my truck, how are things with Lauren? Funny you should ask. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos Tommy had taken. Marcus's face went through several expressions, surprise, guilt, and finally resignation. Mike, I can explain? Explain what? How you've been helping my fiancée cheat on me? How you've been lying to cover for her? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I stood up, pacing to the window. You're supposed to be my best friend. You're supposed to be my best man. and you've been helping her make me look like an idiot." Marcus set down his beer and ran his hands through his hair. "Look, man, I didn't want to get involved. Jessica came to me and said Lauren was going through a rough patch. She said it was just temporary, that she'd work it out before the wedding. So you thought it was okay to help her lie to me? I thought it was better than you getting hurt unnecessarily." Unnecessarily. I turned to face him. "I'm marrying this woman in 6 weeks, and you think her screwing other men is unnecessary information? I thought she'd stop. When? After the wedding? After we had kids? When exactly did you think she'd stop?" Marcus stood up, his own anger starting to show. "You want to know the truth, Mike? Fine. Lauren's out of your league. She always has been. Her family has money, connections, class. You're a good guy, but you're not exactly Prince Charming." The words hit me like a slap. "So I deserve to be cheated on?" "I didn't say that. But maybe you should ask yourself why she's looking elsewhere. Maybe I should ask myself why my best friend thinks I'm not good enough for my own fiancée. Come on, Mike, be realistic. You work in logistics. She's from one of the most prominent families in the state. Did you really think this was going to work long term?" I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. This wasn't my friend trying to protect me from pain. This was someone who'd never respected me in the first place. "You know what, Marcus? You're right. I'm not good enough for Lauren. But I'm too good for friends like you." I headed for the door, but his voice stopped me. "Mike, wait. Look, I'm sorry. I handled this wrong. But the wedding's in 6 weeks. Her parents have spent a fortune. Can't you just, I don't know, work it out? Work it out? Talk to her. Maybe you guys can come to some kind of arrangement." "An arrangement? You know what I mean. Lots of couples have understandings. As long as she's discreet." I didn't let him finish. I walked back across the room and got in his face. "You think I should let my wife cheat on me as long as she doesn't embarrass me publicly? I think you should be practical. Lauren's going to do what she wants anyway. At least this way you get to keep the life you've built with her." "The life I've built? I've built nothing with her. She's built a life with her daddy's money while I worked myself to death trying to keep up. So what are you going to do? Walk away from everything?" "I'm going to do exactly that." I headed for the door again, but Marcus grabbed my arm. "Mike, think about this. You'll lose everything. The apartment, the social circle, the connections. Lauren's family could make things very difficult for you professionally." I shook off his grip. "Is that a threat?" "It's reality. Her father has influence. He could have you blacklisted from every major company in the city." "Let him try. You're making a mistake, Mike. A big one." I stopped at the door and looked back at him. The only mistake I made was trusting people who never deserved it. As I walked out of Marcus's building, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Heard you and Lauren had a fight. Want to talk? I'm at Cafe Luna downtown." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "On my way." It was time to confront the puppet master behind this whole mess. Cafe Luna was the kind of trendy coffee shop where Lauren's crowd liked to see and be seen. All exposed brick walls, expensive espresso machines, and customers who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I found Jessica at a corner table, scrolling through her phone with a latte that probably cost more than most people's lunch. She looked up when I approached, and her smile was pure performance art, concerned friend mixed with just a hint of superiority. "Mike, I'm so glad you came. Sit down, honey. You look terrible." I sat across from her, studying her face. Jessica was attractive in that carefully maintained way that required a team of professionals. Personal trainer, nutritionist, esthetician. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, despite it being a Tuesday afternoon. She'd never worked a day in her life, living off a trust fund from her grandfather's textile business. "Lauren told me you two had a fight," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "I'm sure it's just pre-wedding jitters. Everyone goes through this." "Do they?" "Of course. The pressure of planning a wedding, combining 2 lives, it's incredibly stressful. Sometimes people act out in ways they don't mean." I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us, the screen showing one of Tommy's photos, Lauren and Brad at the motel. Jessica's expression didn't change, but I saw her pupils dilate slightly. "This kind of acting out?" She glanced at the photo, then back at me with practiced sympathy. "Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry you had to see that." "Are you?" "Of course I am. This must be devastating for you." "Tell me something, Jessica. How long have you known?" She sipped her latte, buying time. "Known what?" "About Lauren and Brad. About Lauren and the others." "Others?" I scrolled to another photo. Lauren with the man from the country club. Then another. Lauren and Jessica with 2 men at an expensive restaurant downtown. Want to keep playing dumb, or should we have an honest conversation? Jessica set down her cup and leaned back in her chair. Her mask of concern was starting to slip, replaced by something colder and more calculating. What do you want me to say, Mike? I want you to tell me the truth. How long have you been helping her cheat on me? I haven't been helping her do anything. Lauren makes her own choices. But you've been covering for her, providing alibis, spreading the word that we have an arrangement. Jessica's laugh was sharp and bitter. You want to know the truth? Fine. Lauren's been miserable for months. She's felt trapped, suffocated by your neediness and your constant worry about money. She needed an outlet. So you encouraged her to cheat? I encouraged her to live her life, to stop settling for less than she deserves. And what does she deserve? Jessica leaned forward, her eyes bright with malice. Someone who can keep up with her. Someone who doesn't make her feel like she's slumming it. Someone who doesn't work with his hands for a living. The contempt in her voice was breathtaking. You think I'm beneath her. I think you're a nice guy who got in over his head. Lauren needs someone from her world, someone who understands her background and her expectations. Someone like Brad? Brad's fun, but he's not marriage material. Lauren knows that. So what was the plan? Let me marry her while she screws around on the side. Jessica shrugged. Lots of couples have arrangements. As long as everyone's happy? I wouldn't have been happy. You would have learned to be. Lauren's a catch, Mike. She's beautiful, well-connected, from a good family. Most men would be grateful for whatever attention she gave them. I stared at her, finally understanding. This was never about Lauren being unhappy. This was about you. What's that supposed to mean? You've been in love with her for years. Jessica's face flushed. That's ridiculous. Is it? You've never had a serious relationship. You spend all your time with Lauren, planning her life, managing her social calendar. You were the one who introduced her to Brad, weren't you? I introduced her to a lot of people. You wanted to break us up. You wanted her available. You're being paranoid. I pulled out another photo, one Tommy had taken just yesterday. Jessica and Lauren kissing in the parking lot of an upscale hotel. Jessica went white. Where did you get that? Does it matter? She stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me with pure hatred. You had us followed. I had my cheating fiancé followed. You just happened to be part of the story. You bastard. Tell me something, Jessica. How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé? Go to hell. How long? She grabbed her purse and started to stand, but I caught her wrist. Sit down. We're not done. Let go of me. Not until you tell me the truth. She jerked her arm away, but sat back down. Her perfect composure was completely gone now, replaced by raw fury. You want the truth? Fine. I've been in love with Lauren since college. I've watched her date loser after loser, always hoping she'd finally see what was right in front of her. Then you came along with your puppy dog eyes and your blue-collar charm, and she fell for it. So you decided to sabotage us? I decided to show her what she was missing. Brad was just a way to get her to explore her options, to realize that she didn't have to settle for someone like you. And Marcus? Marcus understands the social order. He knows that some relationships aren't meant to last. So you all conspired to make me look like a fool. We tried to help you avoid a bigger embarrassment down the road. Lauren would have left you eventually anyway. At least this way, you found out before the wedding. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. You really believe that, don't you? You think you were doing me a favor. I think you should be grateful. You were about to marry a woman who doesn't love you. But she loves you? Jessica's smile was triumphant. She's starting to realize what she really wants. And what's that? Someone who understands her. Someone from her world. Someone who can give her the life she deserves. Someone with a trust fund. Someone with class. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Well, Jessica, I hope you and Lauren are very happy together. We will be. I'm sure you will, right up until Lauren gets bored and finds someone new to play with. Jessica's confident smile faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means Lauren doesn't love you any more than she loved me. You're just another toy in her collection. And when she's done playing with you, she'll toss you aside just like she did me. You're wrong. Am I? How many times has she cheated on you already? Jessica's face went pale. She hasn't... Are you sure about that? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Lauren's pattern is pretty clear. She gets bored, she finds someone new, and she moves on. You helped her do it to me. What makes you think you're special? I walked away, leaving Jessica sitting alone with her expensive latte and her expensive delusions. Outside, I called my sister Jenny. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than I expected. I know exactly what I'm dealing with now." "And what's that?" "A bunch of spoiled children who think the world revolves around them. But don't worry, Jen. I'm about to give them a reality check they'll never forget." "What are you planning?" "The wedding of the century." The Alcott family had spared no expense for their daughter's wedding. The Grandview Country Club was booked for the entire weekend, with a rehearsal dinner on Friday and the ceremony on Saturday. 500 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, flowers flown in from Ecuador, and a cake that cost more than most people's cars. Lauren had tried calling me dozens of times over the past 3 weeks, but I hadn't answered. She'd sent texts ranging from apologetic to angry to threatening, but I'd ignored them all. As far as she knew, I was sulking somewhere, probably working up the courage to forgive her and go through with the wedding. She had no idea what was coming. I spent the morning of the rehearsal dinner making final preparations. Tommy had delivered the last batch of evidence the day before, video footage of Lauren and Jessica at the hotel, financial records showing how Lauren had been using her father's credit cards to fund her affairs, and most importantly, a recording of Jessica bragging to friends about how she'd stolen Lauren away from that pathetic loser. My sister Jenny arrived at my apartment at noon, carrying a garment bag and a grim smile. "Please tell me you know what you're doing," she said. "I know exactly what I'm doing." "And you're sure this is the right way to handle it?" "Jen, they humiliated me publicly. They made me look like a fool to everyone I know. They deserve whatever's coming to them." She hung the garment bag in my closet, a custom tuxedo I'd rented for the occasion. "What about Lauren's parents? They're going to lose a fortune on this wedding." "Her parents raised a daughter who thinks she can treat people like garbage without consequences. Maybe losing some money will teach them a valuable lesson about character." "And your job?" Marcus wasn't kidding about her father's influence. "I've already got something else lined up. Tommy's company needs a logistics manager, and he's offering me 20% more than I'm making now." Jenny sat on my couch and looked at me seriously. "Mike, once you do this, there's no going back. You'll be burning every bridge you have in this city." "Good. They're all rotten anyway." That evening, I arrived at the Grandview Country Club in a rented BMW, Tommy's idea, to make sure I looked the part. The valet took my keys with the kind of respectful nod that expensive cars always seem to earn. The rehearsal dinner was being held in the club's main ballroom, a cavernous space with crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of long-dead members. Lauren's crowd was all there, her parents' friends, her college sorority sisters, the country club set who'd never worked a day in their lives but somehow felt entitled to judge everyone else. Lauren was holding court near the bar, wearing a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked beautiful and confident, laughing at something Brad was whispering in her ear. He was there as her friend, since she couldn't exactly bring her lover as her date to her rehearsal dinner. Jessica stood nearby, watching Lauren with the kind of possessive intensity that made my skin crawl. She was wearing a blue dress that complemented Lauren's white one, a coordinated effort that probably wasn't accidental. Marcus was across the room, talking to Lauren's father about golf. He saw me enter, and his face went pale, but I just smiled and waved like nothing had happened. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who had no idea what was about to happen. Lauren's mother, Patricia, cornered me near the appetizer table. "Michael, darling," she said in her practiced society voice, "you look wonderful. I'm so glad you and Lauren worked out your little disagreement." "Little disagreement?" "Oh, you know how it is with young couples, pre-wedding jitters. Lauren was so worried you might not show up tonight." "I wouldn't miss this for the world, Mrs. Alcott." "Please, call me Patricia. We're going to be family, after all." Family. The word felt like poison in my mouth. "Actually, Patricia, I was hoping to make a little speech tonight, to thank everyone for their support." Her face lit up. "Oh, how wonderful. Richard will be so pleased. He was just saying how much he's grown to appreciate you." Richard Alcott had never said more than 10 words to me in the 3 years I'd been dating his daughter, but I just smiled and nodded. "When would be a good time?" "Right after dinner, before the toasts. I'll have the bandleader get everyone's attention." Perfect. Dinner was an elaborate affair. Multiple courses, expensive wine, and the kind of small talk that rich people seem to specialize in. I sat at the head table between Lauren and her maid of honor, Jessica, listening to them discuss tomorrow's ceremony like it was actually going to happen. "I'm so nervous," Lauren whispered to me during the soup course. "But good nervous, you know? I can't wait to be your wife." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen the photos and videos, I might have actually believed her. "I can't wait either," I said, squeezing her hand. "Tomorrow's going to be unforgettable." After dinner, Patricia stood up and tapped her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The room gradually quieted as 500 guests turned their attention to the head table. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "before we begin the traditional toasts, the groom would like to say a few words." I stood up, straightening my tie, and waited for complete silence. Lauren was beaming up at me, her hand resting on my arm. Jessica was watching with barely concealed anxiety. She was the only one who knew I had reason to be angry. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "Lauren and I are so grateful for your support as we begin this new chapter in our lives." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Lauren squeezed my hand encouragingly. "I have to admit," I continued, "the past few weeks have been quite a journey. I've learned so much about the woman I'm supposed to marry tomorrow. Things I never knew about her character, her values, her hobbies." Lauren's smile flickered slightly, but she kept it in place. Jessica had gone rigid beside me. "For instance, I learned that Lauren is incredibly dedicated to physical fitness. She spends hours at the gym, working out with her personal trainer, Brad Morrison, who's here with us tonight." I gestured toward Brad, who raised his wine glass with a cocky grin. He had no idea what was coming. "Lauren's commitment to fitness is really inspiring. She's been working out with Brad 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes until very late at night, really intensive sessions." A few people chuckled, thinking I was making innocent jokes about Lauren's exercise routine. Lauren's smile was starting to look strained. But Lauren's not the only dedicated one. Her maid of honor, Jessica, has been incredibly supportive of Lauren's fitness journey. In fact, Jessica has been participating in some of these workout sessions. Jessica tried to stand up, but I gently pushed her back into her chair. I have to say, I admire their dedication. Most people go to the gym during normal hours, but Lauren and Jessica prefer late-night sessions, sometimes at hotels, really exclusive private workout facilities. The room was starting to murmur. People were beginning to realize that something was off about my speech. And I have to give credit to my best man, Marcus Webb, for being so understanding about Lauren's fitness schedule. Marcus has been incredibly helpful in covering for Lauren when she's been indisposed. Marcus was shaking his head frantically, but I ignored him. In fact, I'm so proud of Lauren's dedication to physical fitness that I wanted to share some photos of her workouts with all of you. I pulled out a remote control and clicked it. A projection screen descended from the ceiling, something I'd arranged with the club's AV team earlier that day, telling them I wanted to show a slideshow of Lauren and me throughout our relationship. The first photo appeared on the screen, Lauren and Brad kissing passionately in the gym's trainer office. The room erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Lauren jumped to her feet, her face white with horror. "Mike, stop!" But I was just getting started. I clicked to the next photo. Lauren and Brad at the motel, clearly in a compromising position. "As you can see," I continued, my voice perfectly calm, "Lauren takes her fitness very seriously. She's been getting quite a workout with Brad here." Brad was on his feet now, looking around desperately for an exit. Several of Lauren's male relatives were starting to stand up, their faces dark with anger. Click. The next photo showed Lauren with the man from the country club, the two of them kissing in the parking lot of an expensive restaurant. But Brad wasn't Lauren's only trainer. She's been very committed to trying different workout routines. "Turn it off!" Lauren screamed, lunging for the remote. I held it out of her reach. Click. The photo of Lauren and Jessica kissing in the hotel parking lot filled the screen. The room went dead silent. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. And of course, Jessica has been more than just a workout partner. She's been Lauren's most intimate training buddy. Jessica was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. Lauren was standing frozen, staring at the screen in horror. "But wait," I said, clicking to a video file. "There's more." The video showed Lauren and Jessica in a hotel room with two men I didn't recognize, all 4 of them in various states of undress. "This was taken last Tuesday," I announced, while I was working overtime to pay for our honeymoon in Italy. Richard Alcott was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "Turn that off immediately." "Why?" I asked. "I thought you'd want to see what your money has been paying for. Those hotel bills, the expensive dinners, the gifts for her various workout partners. It's all been charged to your credit cards." I clicked to a financial document showing thousands of dollars in charges to hotels, restaurants, and jewelry stores. "Your daughter has been very generous with your money, Mr. Alcott. She's been funding quite an extensive recreational program." Several guests were heading for the exits, but most were too shocked to move. Lauren's sorority sisters were staring at her in horror and fascination. "Mike, please," Lauren whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please stop." "Stop?" I clicked to another video. This one of Jessica bragging to friends about stealing Lauren away from me. But we haven't gotten to the best part yet. The audio was crystal clear. Jessica's voice explaining how she'd orchestrated the entire affair, how she'd manipulated Lauren into cheating, how they'd all laughed about making me look like a fool. You see, I said, addressing the room, this wasn't just about Lauren being unhappy. This was about a group of people who thought they were better than me, deciding to humiliate me for their own entertainment. I turned to face Lauren's parents. Your daughter and her friends have spent months making me look like an idiot. They've told people I was okay with an open relationship. They've laughed about how desperate I was to marry into your family. They've treated me like I was some kind of charity case who should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention I could get. Patricia Alcott was sobbing into her napkin. Richard looked like he was about to have a heart attack. So I thought it was only fair that everyone should know the truth about the kind of people they really are. I clicked off the projector and set the remote on the table. The wedding is canceled, obviously. I've already spoken to the vendors, the flowers, the cake, the band. Everything's been paid for, so please, everyone enjoy the party. Consider it a celebration of honesty. I started to walk away, but Lauren grabbed my arm. Mike, wait, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I looked down at her tear-streaked face, this woman who had seemed so beautiful and sophisticated when I first met her. Now she just looked desperate and pathetic. Fix this? Lauren, you've been cheating on me for months. You've been laughing about it with your friends. You've been using your father's money to fund your affairs. What exactly do you think we can fix? I'll change. I'll be better. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of having someone who worships you while you do whatever you want. But that's not love, Lauren. That's just selfishness. I gently removed her hand from my arm. Goodbye, Lauren. Enjoy your workout routines. As I walked toward the exit, I passed Marcus, who was sitting alone at his table, staring at his hands. Mike, he called out. Mike, wait. I stopped and looked back at him. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm really sorry. I know you are, Marcus. But sorry doesn't fix anything. What are you going to do now? I smiled for the first time in weeks. I'm going to live my life without people who think I'm not good enough for them. Outside, the valet brought me the BMW, and I drove away from the Grandview Country Club for the last time. In my rearview mirror, I could see guests streaming out of the building, their voices carrying across the parking lot as they discussed what they'd just witnessed. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts, but I turned it off. Tomorrow, I would start over somewhere new with people who appreciated honesty and loyalty. Tonight, I was finally free.